Welcome to the Catch Up podcast. I am Phillip Blackmore, and today I'm joined by Mark Edwards. Mark is a vastly experienced D365 program director.
I never regarded myself as a sales guy particularly. Yeah. I think some colleagues were frightened that he's too honest, you know. The work that is being done on the project is as important to the C-suite as placing orders or winning business. Yep. When there's bad news, it's always better to bring the bad news out early. The change manager is not responsible for all the change. It's way too big a task to leave. But change management is a critical to success factor to get right.
He talks us through his early career journey to current day and gives us some great insights on why customers should consider doing a business transformation program. Mark, good morning. Thanks for spending some time with me and taking some time out of your day to chat with me today. For our audience that are going to be listening today, I've known Mark for quite a while now. I don't know if it's 10, maybe 15 years, maybe.
11 or 12 years, yeah, Phil.
Yeah, it's been a little while. Mark, your background and your experience very much in that sort of program director space, program management space, very much focused in and around the Microsoft Dynamics space and stack over the last, I guess, in terms of the entirety I've known you, certainly. Yeah. Telling us a little bit about your kind of career journey, because I think sometimes people look at, well, how do you become a program director? How do you become that kind of senior program leader? And I think it's interesting because there's not necessarily just a set career path for someone that ends up in that role. You know, there's all sorts of journeys someone can go on to find themselves in that position. And I think for the audience, it'd be interesting to get, you know, your perspective on, you know, what your career looked like in the early days and kind of your first touch points with IT technology and then sort of in the specific sort of program leadership kind of roles that you take on today.
So I didn't actually start out thinking I wanted to work in the IT industry. And I certainly didn't think about starting, when I started my career, thinking I'd end up being a program manager.
Yeah.
I began my career in manufacturing engineering.
Sure.
So after university, I got a graduate traineeship with what was then GEC. So I did a very broad-based engineering degree, went in to do an apprenticeship, and then went into manufacturing engineering. And then from there, when we were looking at things like cell design, manufacturing cell design, and how we could improve flow on a factory floor, that sort of then naturally led to a production management role, a junior production management role.
Yeah.
And it was there that I came across ERP. I was asked to effectively be a work stream lead for the company's ERP project.
What was the product you were implementing at that time, Mark?
That was a product called MFG Pro by QAD in America.
I remember it.
Really good, sensible mid-market system. Yeah. And then I think as a result of doing that, I got a taste of how IT could be used within business processes to simplify them, streamline them. Certainly, the implementation we did where I worked. It had a massive impact on the business. We had lots and lots of sort of islands of automation, and one system meant elimination of many touch points. So I think when we'd gone live, I think the view I took was just like a production machine. You don't ever just put it in and leave it. You've got to maintain it. You've got to innovate. So too with the business system. From a junior production management position, I then ended up running a production department and being responsible for continuous improvement within electronics assembly. And then it seemed a natural step after 10 years to look to join an ERP vendor. And as it was, I joined QAD.
Okay, fine.
And I started as a manufacturing consultant. And then from there, went into pre-sales and marketing.
Right. Okay.
I never regarded myself as a sales guy particularly. I think some colleagues were frightened that he's too honest, you know. But actually, customers valued straight talking.
Absolutely.
They respect when you say no, it can't do that. They remember that, and they come back to you again and again and again because they know they're going to get the truth. And then from there, I was asked to go and take over the consulting practice for North EMEA.
Okay.
I had a job of turning it from loss making to profitability, which we did, and that was based upon a sort of value based selling, looking beyond the IT, if you like. I then wanted to go back into industry. I felt I'd seen IT, I'd seen electronics, but I really wanted to sort of touch supply chain. And I was fortunate enough to get a role with a client where I was a supply chain manager for a couple of years. And from there, I went to work for a Manchester-based management consultancy firm. And that was very much focused on organisational redesign, process improvement, cost reduction. It's there that I came across Dynamics AX3, or I guess Exapta, as it was probably then.
Yeah, it would have been Exapta then, yeah.
It had been heavily customised, ridiculously so. And
we used to see it a lot back then.
Incredible. At first thinking that the product was no good and we'd have to rip it out and replace it with a completely brand new system. But all we did was just apply some Lean Six Sigma basic thinking, process mapped out the material flow, the information flow. And actually, we realized that AX4, the later version, was more than capable out of the box of handling the business. It wasn't a particularly complicated business. It was a buy, sell, plan, the usual components, really. So that's where I came across Dynamics. And then on successive projects, there was more and more Dynamics that I came across, such that I ended up going to work for a partner as head of services.
Yeah,
that's sort of led really into doing contract program and project management work. And since 2012, with a couple of years exception, I've always been focused working client side. On project or program management effectively. So I think in summary, I've seen ERP from both a user perspective in production management, from a management consultancy perspective, and from a vendor perspective, and then more recently as actually responsible for the delivery of the programs or the projects on behalf of the client. And I although I've tended to focus mostly on manufacturing and supply chain businesses, I've worked also within third sector charities, within retail, within rental, and the whole gamut really of what an ERP system could apply to.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were talking at the beginning there, Mark, about your I guess your experience in your earlier days when you went in, and you mentioned about doing the pre-sales and maybe there being a slight concern or about you being too honest. It's an interesting point there, because as soon as you said that, it really resonated, because all too often we hear, and it comes through to us, and I always prefix this with, a lot of people like to talk about the more negative examples of situations and projects and whatnot, but all too often we do hear about projects that have been missold from its kind of infancy in terms of sales, pre-sales, customers' expectations being here, and then the reality of what they're going to get or what they're paying for being substantially less than essentially their expectations. For you in your role and over that journey, are there examples where and obviously you've worked partner side and end user side, where is that something that you've taken through your career, I guess, in terms of that absolute honesty, that ability, and also, I guess, from experiencing being partner side and a customer side, when you go into a customer and you look at, and I guess it depends what stage you come into that piece of work, but is that something you look at quite quickly when you start working with a customer, in terms of the engagement they have with their consulting partner, what the agreement is and what their deliverables are, and I guess the feasibility of them delivering what they say they're going to do for the cost that has been quoted? Is that something you would look at quite early on?
Yes, it is. I've certainly gone into several clients both when I've worked with vendors, but also directly with clients, where I think through experience, you kind of do a sniff test, if you like, and you can quite quickly, through experience, look at the contract. You can see it's incredibly vague. There isn't really any detail in the contract, and you know when you see a lack of detail. And when I say contract, I don't just mean the sort of the master service agreement, but the specific scope of work, of what is going to be delivered and who's going to do what. Some vendors in the past have been specifically vague about that, and all that does is it creates a real problem for the project manager, and it creates a relationship problem for the vendor and the client downstream. I think one of the things that I've observed is a lot of clients, and you might say, well, you would say that because you're a program manager, but a lot of clients, they don't have experience of big ERP programs. They don't understand what's involved, and there's no reason why they should, to be brutally honest, because that's not their core business. But they will go through a supplier selection piece, and then they'll think about bringing a project manager or a program manager in. It's kind of too late then, to some extent, because the groundwork has been defined. So I don't know whether that answers your question.
Well, it does, Mark. And as you were talking then, because one of the things I was thinking is, I guess the advice, or what could a customer do? What could prevent that? What are the options a customer has? So a customer's going on that journey at the moment, and they are, they get to they're looking at their existing systems, and it's either breaking, or a support agreement's ending, and they don't want to stay with what they're currently on, or they know that they need to move systems for various reasons, but business growth demands, or whatever it may be. If you're sat there and you're sort of your customer side, what would be, I guess, a preventative way, or how do you make sure as a business that you are entering an agreement with your consulting partner that is, I guess, that everyone understands,
realistic,
realistic,
deliverable.
and realistic, deliverable, and you as the customer are going to kind of get what you think you're going to get for the money that you're being quoted. Really,
there was some change management work done by a guy called Noster, I think he's pronounced, and it's a very simple model that he came up with. And one of the components for success was defining the vision. So what on earth is the purpose of what are we trying to achieve? A chemical company that I've worked with, I'll give you as this as an example again without naming them.
No, it helps.
But they said, we need a new system. Well, why? So the question's really then, well, why? Well, because the old system's no longer supported. Okay, but you then press the flesh a bit further. So you're saying really the reason you want to invest a lot of money is purely to reduce risk, and that's not an invalid reason at all. But fundamentally, a system change is going to require a lot of change within the business. Surely there's more to it than just risk mitigation. So what I've done in the past and would continue to do is to really try and build a picture with the senior management team, starting with the directors. What is it that the business has got to be really good at? So think about, how does the business win business? How does it win their business from their customers? Why does it lose business? So what's stopping it from actually winning every bit of business it ever gets, or ever bids for? And what's it got to do to qualify to win business? So to give an example, you could say to qualify, you've got to be able to say, provide a system that will automate pricing. And I'm being just very simplistic here. But to win the business, you've got to be able to deliver it to a customer within 2 weeks lead time, for example, not 4-week lead time. What is it the customer of the client is expecting to do when they make their buying decision? So the manufacturing company, for example, what have you got to be really good at to succeed in your marketplace? And then if you think about today, what's hindering you, what's stopping you, or what's blocking you from winning business, from qualifying for business? why do you actually lose orders? And things like the 5 whys, the simple lean thinking techniques of 5 whys, 5 hows. Those are great ways of really getting into kind of root cause. So from that, it should be quite feasible to build up a picture of what are therefore we trying to achieve with this project.
Yeah.
And with the chemical company I worked with a few years ago, we effectively defined 8 objectives. So yes, one was risk mitigation, but there were others, and one was to improve productivity. And you could say, well, that's no big surprise.
Sure.
But improve productivity by eliminating touch points in the handovers, for example, getting rid of non-value added activity, automating where we do things manually. Ideally, you would look to put some sort of smart target around these and actual measurable. That isn't always possible without significant work. But I think it's fair to say that before you go anywhere near a vendor, what you really want to do is define the vision. Also think about the target operating model, so the kind of the enterprise architecture, if you like.
Absolutely.
So is the organizational structure of the company, is that really working today, or is there opportunity in scope to rethink that? Think about handovers again. Think about processes and who does what and where. And then there is, of course, the I wouldn't say the usual, but the key sort of level 1 process flow that you envision the business having. So from literally placement of order through to receipt of cash at the end of the day, what's the sequence of steps? So what's that first cut of the to-be process?
Yeah.
And for some companies, that might just be the as is, but for others, they will know what they would like it to look like. And I think when you've got that, you can then have a sensible conversation with vendors.
Yeah.
And certainly that's what we did in the chemical company. And we did build, of course, a business case. We were able to estimate what the kind of the cash savings might be, the non-cashable savings were likely to be, what we thought the inventory reduction opportunity was likely to be. And again, you have to be conservative. But once you've at least got that, and you've got the management team bought into that, you've then got something you can have a sensible conversation with a vendor. And if a vendor's any good, what they will then do is they'll get under the skin of that. Yeah. And when they do effectively their demonstrations, which you don't want a sort of just a spray and pray demonstration. You want something quite targeted on a specific problem. If they're any good, then they will be able to present how their solution, how their system will solve or will improve, enhance the current process, or in fact meet what the to-be process is. And I think as a result of doing that, you really kind of sift the wheat from the chaff. The really good vendors from perhaps the not quite so good vendors, and you also see the passion in the eyes of the consultants. One of the things we were very keen on doing was what you might call real consultants and the real solution architect and the real project manager.
Absolutely,
we didn't want to see pre-sales guys. I mean, there's pre-sales guys are very gifted, but they are very gifted, and they're superb at sort of spinning, and that's their job. But we wanted
highlighting all the nice shiny things about the product.
Yeah. And there's a place for that. There absolutely is.
Of course.
But what we wanted to see was we weren't going to be working with the pre-sales guys. We were going to be working with the consultants who actually were going to roll their sleeves up and get stuck in. And what we didn't want to see was passive consultants who kind of wait for you to tell them everything. We wanted to see consultants who would ask questions and prove their credibility, prove that they'd been financial managers, prove they'd been planning managers, prove that they'd been production managers, for example. So I think building that vision is the first step.
And from when you're talking there, Mark, and I think it sounds maybe an obvious thing to say, but as a business that's about to embark on this journey, that they've really got to take a level of ownership themselves in terms of, this is our project. They have to have that investment of time and effort and energy themselves in terms of doing that first piece. Sometimes we get quoted, or you hear the phrase, our partner's managing that, or we've got, I might say to a customer that's about to embark, you've talked about getting some expertise in a program manager. You mentioned that getting a program manager in almost sort of at a certain stage can be too late, that you want to bring them in early.
Yeah.
Sometimes we may have a conversation with a CIO or a CFO that we know are embarking on a project, and they say our partner's program managing it for us.
Right.
And that always, to me, just from experience of 15, 20 years of speaking to customers, and like I always say to everyone, we don't do these projects. I don't deliver them. I don't sit on them day to day. I don't know how to do them. But what I do is I do speak to a lot of people that are very good at delivering these projects, and I hear good and I hear bad. And often one of the most symptomatic associations with a bad project, it often feels like it's that our partner's doing that. Our partner's doing that. And I kind of always try and encourage, well, it's your project at the end of the day. It's probably worth you exploring the benefits of having your own program manager, your own solution lead, someone that has an understanding of the product. I mean, a project program manager at the very least. But if you can have a project program manager and a product specialist, a D365 specialist to sit there that knows the product as well, that can be very useful in addition. But is that something that you've experienced before, Mark? And is that something, I guess, that you would always advise, where possible, a customer to really sort of consider the benefit of I guess, bringing some in-house capabilities to sit alongside the business and work with the partner? I always say it's working with the partner. It's not to be, it's not to be abrasive. It's not to have someone there just butting heads. The whole thing's got to be collaborative. It's, your partner are your partner, hence the word partner, like you work with them. But having someone there just that can see the speed bumps, that can maybe see the warning signs, like you said, exactly then the contract comes through and it's very vague. Having someone that kind of identifies that, exactly the points you make there. Well, I don't want to see the pre-sales people. I want to see who the program manager is. They're the things that I guess that the real value that someone with experience can add to work with a customer.
Yeah, I think probably there's a number of things to say on that. Very few vendors, and rightly so, would say that they are responsible for program managing the client's program. It's not realistic. The vendor, their expertise is in the software, effectively, and they are going to naturally look from a software out perspective. So they'll start with the box of tricks, and they'll look out to see how to apply it. They don't have the knowledge of the customer's business. They will acquire that for sure over time, but it needs a customer team who recognize that the customer team, work stream leads, for example, they are responsible and have been made responsible. And I'll come on to some other key points in a minute about this. They're responsible for translating how the business works to the partner, and effectively the ideal, very much the ideal, is that if the CEO of the client walks into the project room and there is the vendor's staff there and there is the client staff there, you don't want to be able to discern who works for clients and who works for vendor.
Sure.
They're effectively hand in glove. To think that the vendor can do it for you is a bit like thinking that an A-level maths teacher can take the pupil's paper.
Okay. It's a really good analogy.
It just doesn't work. And the reason, therefore, why it is so essential to get that stakeholder engagement, and by stakeholders, there's obviously everybody's a stakeholder, the employees on the factory floor to the offices, they're stakeholders, but the middle managers, who are the people basically who run the business on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, their role is critical. So having them nominated as global process owners. So, for example, you might take the planning manager and or the planning director even, and they are the process owner for, say, forecast to schedule, for example. The procurement management might be procure to pay, for example. But they are the people who've got to sign off the processes. They are the people who've got to look at the end-to-end demonstration, including all the what-ifs, and they've got to be satisfied that the design that's been prepared by the workstream leads and the vendor together meets the needs of the business. If the client simply thinks that the vendor can do it all for them, you'll end up with that classic cartoon, Phil, you will have seen, where the swing is what the customer wants and what they get is something nothing like a swing.
Absolutely.
And I think as well is the consideration of incentives and rewards. I've never worked on a single project where I wouldn't say it's just an IT project. It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard this before
Business
from many of
transformation.
my
Yeah.
peers. This is a business change project
Yeah.
or a business change program.
Yeah.
And where businesses fall down is where they fail to realize that.
Yeah.
There's ways you can put in place controls to ensure that doesn't happen, of course. The way to make sure that the business actually take this seriously is actually to put in place bonus plans, incentives, rewards for the management team of the client, for the work stream leaders, for the lead SMEs, so that they realize from the CEO, CFO, CIO, COO that the work that is being done on the project is as important to the C-suite as placing orders or winning business or maintaining the production plant to be Six Sigma capable, whatever it might be.
Sure.
To just think you can outsource it all to the vendor is a big mistake. What the vendor absolutely should do is obviously bring the expertise. They need to bring not only the expertise of the solution, but they need to bring capable people who can knowledge transfer to the client.
Yeah.
And so they've got to have a passion for effectively training and teaching and sharing. And they will bring expertise, of course, on things like how to test, how to do security, how to do interfaces, and all of that kind of technical solution expertise is what they should bring.
Absolutely.
But to expect them to just manage it all for you is unrealistic.
Yeah, and potential recipe for disaster.
It is for the reasons I've given. It would take years, and of course then it wouldn't get accepted.
No, I get that. And when you look back, Mark, sort of, I guess, early career, sort of when you said you sort of made that first sort of step into working within ERP, is there anything that you picked up in your, I guess, your skills and your experience and your learnings in those early days that you still very much use in your role today? Is there anything kind of specific when you look back at those early days? Do you think, there was something that I picked up that I still very much take into my roles today?
Yes, I think probably there's a number of things. I've kind of touched on a few. Never to just take the current process for granted. Many years ago, I was very fortunate. The managing director of my first company that I worked for, he made the statement out of the box, only out of the box, and everyone's heard that before, out of the box only. But he would say, read my lips, out of the box, and he would just keep hammering that. If you went to him with here's a business case for £20,000 spend, give us a good return, it's going to require customization, he'd say, read my lips, out the box. Right. I think the thing that I've learned over the years is you can do it differently.
Sure.
To use an analogy, if I don't know whether you like walking, Phil, but if you think about, say, walking up Snowdon, there's multiple ways of walking up Snowdon, and you can also take the train. Now, some people have a preferred path, but imagine that path was closed. Does that mean you can't get to the top of Snowdon? No, take another route. There's another way up to the top of the Snowdon. In other words, we're trying to think about the outcome we're trying to achieve, not the means to do it. And really then be guided by how the system out of the box works to achieve that outcome. And then as soon as companies veer from that is a sticky wicket. It's a bit like having a whole load of dominoes on the floor and you knock one and so they all knock over. As soon as you start to accept customization, I'm not talking about interfacing, but customization, it becomes easy to accept the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one. So I think that was a really important lesson. I think the second one that I think is really important is we've talked about ERP programs are change. They are a massive change program. We've got to remember that when the system goes live, the core team and the vendor, they're experts, but nobody else is.
No.
And in many ways, we need to recognize that everyone's going to go through that classic change curve at some point. So better they start early. And I remember one of the things that we did again when I literally in my 20s, we put some dummy screens out so that employees could come and see how the new system was starting to look, and you could have a play and have a dabble, for example. When I was at the chemical companies, we made sure we had lead SMEs observing and looking really early days at how the system was starting to look, so that they could inform whether there were issues, but they could start to break down their fears, which was so key, because they were going to be the influencers on everybody else. Oh, if Fred says it'll be okay, it'll be okay. I'm not going to worry. But if Fred is worried, then I'm going to be worried.
Absolutely.
So if you can conquer Fred, whoever Fred is, and you can conquer Fred's equivalents in the other departments, early doors, get them involved really early on, you stand a far greater chance of success. There are many projects where the perfect solution's been designed, built, and tested and delivered, and then it's not used. And it's not used because there wasn't that engagement earlier on. And then people weren't necessarily told, why are we doing this? What's the benefit to me? And then maybe there's a great fear around, and how do I use the system? And nobody trained me properly, and nobody educated me properly, and all the usual kind of things that fall out from that. But so those are the two key things. No sacred cows in terms of, don't say we always do it that way. Look at other ways, particularly out the box ways. And then start the change journey right at the very beginning. Don't leave it till the end.
And is that one of the most important things? Because it's often spoken to me about the value and the importance of change management within these programs, and the communication that is associated with change management, and the communication to the business. Is that something that you see, as you go into a program, if you walk into an organization tomorrow, that is one of the absolutely key pieces that enables or supports and assists towards a successful program delivery, is change management?
Yes, it is.
Good change management.
I sort of try and summarize what makes for a successful program. What if you could sort of summarize maybe the 8 or so things that lead to a successful program that you've got to attend to as either a project manager or as a program manager, program director, call it what you will. Yeah. One is the vision that we talked about. The other are the plans. So that's thinking about the methodology, whether you go phased, whether you go big bang, all that sort of stuff. We talked about resources, making sure you've got resources internally. We talked about incentives and rewards. There's the leadership and the management, which kind of goes without saying, but it's having the expertise and experience in the team who are going to implement this system internally, not just externally. We've talked about stakeholders and the importance of engaging stakeholders, and particularly having process owners. We've touched on change management, and change management it's a key project in itself, really. At the very least, it's a work stream that touches all the other work streams. And I think the thing sometimes that I've witnessed is work streams can sometimes say, "Oh, that's the change manager's job to do the change." Right. That also where it fails and falls down. Yeah. The change manager is there to facilitate and to guide and to steer, but ultimately the change management is down to the head of function. So the COO, for example, the COO will cascade down to head of procurement, head of planning, head of operations, whatever, and then down to the team leader. So it literally becomes like an organizational top down approach, so that you end up having trainers who are lead SMEs or work streams. Again, that has to be worked through. But the change manager is not responsible for all the change. It's way too big a task to leave. But change management is a critical to success factor to get right. And one of the aspects that we've not touched on is when you go live, how do you make sure people are using the system? So it's putting in place and defining upfront audit mechanisms. Okay. So if you think about the old-fashioned sort of BS 5750, and I'm showing my age now, but the old style audits, they used to kind of audit you against what your code of practice was. What I'm talking about is that plus looking at how can further improvements be made to the process. Where can we make further refinements to the process? So that then springboards into continuous improvement once you've gone live. Because rarely ever when you launch a system, is it perfect? Is it right first time? It's like launching a new car. You know, the version of the car 3 or 4 years later is significantly refined and upgraded from the first model version that was released. I think the other key thing we've not touched on is data management. So this critical to success of any IT system implementation, whether it be a healthcare bed reservation system, whatever, is data management. And fundamentally, again, to use an analogy, think of data as like the petrol you put in your car. Absolutely. If the petrol's dirty, then your car's going to break, even if your car is top dollar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the data management, data cleanliness, the structure of the data model definition, and then how it's cut over is key to the success. And then finally, of course, there's the technical design, which again we've touched on, because you should always use the out of the box solution as the basis for how the system will work going forward.
And when you think back, Mark, and it's something I would sort of ask everyone that I like to speak to, in terms of, you look back on, you've been involved in a variety of different projects. Is there anything when you look back on your career and you kind of look, there was any particular or specific challenge you faced on a project, how you overcame that, and then how that again sort of defines your approach, or how then you sort of preempt or try and identify that risk earlier? Is there any examples of where you sort of think, yeah, that was a really challenging piece of work that I was managing at that time, and that's how I looked to navigate that at that time?
Oh gosh. Where do you want to start, really? I mean, I can think of, I mean, there's challenges in every program.
Yeah, of course.
And I think the key is to do as much upfront preparation as you can and nail down as many things as you can to minimize the grey areas later on. But you'll always have grey, as you know, and as everybody on this who listens to this will realize. I was asked to take over a project where the client was particularly unhappy. So I was working for a vendor at the time. This client's program manager was a tough guy, and he was saying, we're going live in 3 months. And again, you walk in, do a sniff, and you think there's not a chance. Not a chance is this going to go live in 3 months. It's back to, I guess, having integrity. I decided that I was going to tell the client early, because I'd sniffed it and I believed it. This is not going to go live when you want it. He was, I won't say aggressive, but he was certainly overly assertive.
Forthcoming.
That's right. Yeah. and he pushed, and I articulated why I didn't believe it was realistic, and I said, I think it's going to require another 3 months beyond that. We need to do some planning and thinking through, but the evidence that I see both from my team and your team is that this is going to require at least 3 more months longer than you want. And it will therefore require more spend. And I remember him saying, well, it's just not acceptable. And I said, okay, well, look, I can't convince you. And therefore, what I think you need to do is you need to contact my employer effectively, and request a new project manager, because this project manager is telling you it's going to be 3 more months. And when I did that, he shut up, and stopped, and he then said to me, when I next saw him, I didn't believe it either. I didn't believe the timeline either. But the point was, I think, that if I hadn't perhaps been tough, and stood my ground, and been transparent, he would have kept pushing, but he would have ended up having a failure. I think when there's bad news, it's always better to bring the bad news out early. And I know that clients don't like bad news. Nobody does.
No, of course.
But it's far better to get the bad news out quick if there's bad news to be communicated. Be clear why there's bad news, and then you can work out together what you're going to do about it. Because you touched on it earlier on. These projects are never us and them. They are we us our, as opposed to you or me. So I think that would be a general statement and a specific example, if that helps.
No, it does. It really does. And I think, again, as I listen to you talk there, and I think what makes up a good project manager, program director, someone that's got a little bit of bravery, someone that is willing to, put their head above the parapet and kind of say, do you know what? I'm going to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm doing it for the greater good and for the reality. And that honesty, that integrity. And I always say it, there's some really, really great project program managers out there. Finding them is not always easy, but the really good ones, and exactly what you've said there, are the ones that will put their head up. They will say what they believe is absolutely right, and they will do it with honesty and integrity for a better end result. Some people won't. Some people will quite simply take the easy road and shy away from having that difficult conversation in the hope that 3 months' time, it might be okay, and bang, it's not, and then it's disaster time, really, isn't it? Because then you've almost gone further. You've gone that bit further down the road where it's even harder to recover it.
It is. I think that probably leads on to one of the points I wanted to make about, say, project managers and indeed program managers. So if we think of a program manager managing obviously a series of projects, some of which may be dependent on others, but there's a lot of similarity in skill. The program manager, we know, tends to focus more on the overall business risks and the achievement of business objectives. But as a project manager, or indeed as a program manager, the question is, how do you know whether there's bad news to break?
Yeah.
I've worked with senior people who, I suppose, because of their seniority in the business, I thought I could believe them when they said black is black. And in truth, I found out later that I was being told one thing, but actually the reality was somewhat different.
Sure.
That was a learning point. And I think as a result of that, I've always tended to adopt, and there is a balance between standing aloof and micromanagement, and you don't want to do either. So there's a balance to be had. But what the program manager or the project manager's got to do is dig into the detail and ask to see evidence. So show me the specification, or you can do it on a sample basis, for example, or you attend presentations and you're there not to pick holes for the sake of it, but you are there as a critical friend, and you do need to ask why, how, and so on and so forth, so that you are able to identify where there's been something overlooked. And I think to that end, if say somebody was listening to this and they work for the health service, well, they might say, well, there's no point in bringing somebody from a manufacturing experience in. I think ideally, if I was to be a healthcare CEO, ideally what I would want is a program management with health management experience, plus ERP, plus consultancy, and so on. And only if there wasn't would I then look to say people who had experience in manufacturing or finance or something else.
Something closely associated.
I think the experience of the program manager, whether that be internally sourced or externally sourced through companies like yourself, it is advantageous if that person has had experience of that industry. Now, sometimes companies can say, you've got to have had experience of I don't know, cake making. That's really precise.
That's niche.
And I think you're going to really struggle.
Absolutely.
But I think it's no bad thing to say they need to have experience of manufacturing and planning, or they need to have experience of rental, as well as strong program management CV. And that's simply so that the person then can come in and they know the questions to ask themselves. And they can there probe in and check to see whether there is indeed everything's working, or whether indeed there is bad news to have to communicate and fix.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great point. It really is. Something I always like to ask everyone, Mark, that I speak to is, if an ex-colleague or a friend of yours is a CIO, COO, and they say to you, Mark, we're about to embark on a digital transformation project. We're looking at probably moving to Microsoft Dynamics. What are the sort of 3-4 key pieces of advice that you would look to sort of, just to say, look here, look, just before you do anything, think about these 2, 3, 4 things, and just make sure that you take note and you're as prepared as possible. Is there anything? Are there some specific things that you would, I guess, guide someone or encourage them to do when they're talking about, I guess, being in the infancy of this journey, to make sure that they lay the foundations that, I guess, support a greater chance of success of delivering the project on time and on budget where possible?
I think anybody should always ask themselves, why do I want to move to D365? Or equally, why do I want to move to SAP? Or why do I want to move to JD Edwards or Oracle or NetSuite or whatever it might be? And I think to answer that question, you've got to ask, what's wrong with what we've got? Why is what we've got hindering us? And sometimes people can kind of visualize in their brains, get it written down, actually physically commit pen to paper to write down as precisely as one can why the current system is no longer fit for purpose. And then I think CEOs, managing directors, no, they don't have time, but they are smart people. And if I was an MD or a CEO, and let's say I got SAP, and if a CIO came to me and said, we want to switch from SAP to QAD or SAP to D365, the first question you'd ask is, well, why first of all do we need to do anything? And secondly, why change from what we've got? Because changing from SAP to Dynamics 365 is a much bigger change than going from one version of SAP to another, or from one version of Oracle to another. I think those would be key questions for people to really hone in on and precisely answer in a written down format. I think then it's back to what we talked about, vision, in terms of what is it you want to do in the future that you can't do if you stay where you are, and then how will that actually benefit the business? And I'd say benefit the business. How is it going to increase revenue? How is it going to improve profitability? How is it going to improve customer service? So think about like the net promoter score. That might be something that's relevant for some customers. How might it reduce costs? So there are probably very few ERP programs that are done to reduce headcount, but it is important to consider. So are we looking to reduce heads by 20%? And more importantly, we could if we switch to X, Y, or Z because I think it is really very much preparing that vision statement, that enterprise architectural blueprint as to what we want to do and why staying where we are isn't the right thing, and then what the benefits would be, assuming we can achieve those. I think as far as Microsoft is concerned, I guess a personal view is that probably a little bit like in the 80s and early 90s, that if you were choosing SAP, you were never sacked. I think Microsoft, it's well known as probably in the top 3 systems. It's so broad and it's got so many bits in the armory, effectively, that moving to Microsoft solution is a sensible thing to think, because it's a safe bet, because you've got everything in the toolkit that can bolt to it. But that shouldn't stop you from answering those questions that I mentioned earlier on.
No, that's a really good piece of advice, I think, because too often people just not saying anyone makes a decision on a whim, but it is that kind of really giving that thought process early on to why are we doing it, and what is the ultimate goal, and what is the gain at the end of it? What do we gain from doing this? Because if you don't understand what the gain is, and it comes back to you were talking then about earlier on about the SMEs and the change management piece, and Fred having to be, the voice of, if he's comfortable and he sees as you're going through this, this journey and this program that, it's going to be okay. I can see this is actually going to make our job easier. And it's going to, then when he's then speaking to his team about how it's going to be positive conversation. Whereas if, like you said, if Fred is anxious or nervous or isn't on board or is, slightly negative about what's going on, that will transmit through the team, and then that causes those issues. So
it absolutely will.
Yeah, no, it's vital. Mark, thank you so much for your insights today. Honestly, like it's been really refreshing and interesting to hear about, your experience, your thoughts on what success looks like within projects, and I think really importantly, there's some really great pointers there for organizations that are thinking about doing this, or organizations that are already into that journey, because it's never too late. If you are into a program journey and you are hitting some roadblocks, listening to some of the things that you've said there, taking on some of that advice and just maybe going over or doing, if there's customers and businesses have to do it, is some replanning midway through a project, taking on some of those points and some of that advice you've given, I think would be valuable to any organisation. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for spending the time talking to me today. It's been brilliant.
Pleasure, Phil. And hope it's been useful, and for anybody who listens.
Yeah, no, it really has been, Mark. Thank you ever so much for your time today. I genuinely appreciate it. It's been brilliant. Okay. Thank you.
Take care, Phil. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Catch Up podcast today. Please subscribe on your podcast app for all future episodes, and head over to YouTube for the video version.